Hi guys, welcome back to another GGA video review. Today we have a massive review coming up of Thermaltake's latest products. Probably these two products today are probably Thermaltake's best products, or their best products for the year so far. They're getting rave reviews on the net. First of all, we have the Thermaltake DPS 850 watt power supply. It's been getting some really good reviews, although this review I'm doing won't be too technical, as in ripple and efficiency and all that. I don't have the equipment to do it. I'll put down a link for a review which you can check out from Johnny Guru. He will go into all of that, and it is one of the best performing power supplies out on the market. And also the core V71 case as well from Thermaltake. It's sort of a step above the rest of Thermaltake cases that have been released recently. Thermaltake has really put a lot of support in radiator support and cooling potential in this case. So I won't spend any more time going over those. We'll just jump in now and have a quick look at the power supply. So some of the standout features for this power supply is 7-year warranty. That's really good. I haven't seen Thermaltake with a 7-year warranty before on a power supply. It's ERP ready. This is to do with some motherboards are coming out and you need a power supply that are ERP ready. It's to do with the standby voltage. So if you're getting a new system, make sure your motherboard and your power supply are both compatible. It's 80 plus gold, which is pretty much a standard these days. It's NVIDIA SLI ready. It'll also be Crossfire ready as well. It's digital. I'll show you that later on. It actually comes with a software suite you can install on your system to monitor this power supply. I probably won't do this in this video. I'll do a second video later on that goes into all of that, and it supports the latest Intel Haswell chipset, and it's 850 watt. Moving on to the back, some of the other main things to look at. It's got a single 12 volt rail. A lot of people like those if you're into servers and building sort of storage arrays and things like that. We'll just zoom in that way. So you got 70 amps on the 12 volt rail, so that's really good to see that. And then for your standard 3.35, you got 25 amps, 25 amps, minus 12 and plus 5, not as important. Moving on to the peripheral connectors, which is also really important to most people. 24 pin, yes, of course, we got that. We have your 4+4 pins, so this is your EPS 8-pin connector. We have one of those. I'm surprised we don't have two 8-pin connectors, I guess, if you're running a motherboard that requires two. 4-pin peripherals for like your Molex, for CD-ROMs, not used too much these days. We have 8, one floppy connector, which you probably won't need, and your SATAs, for your 5-pin SATAs, which you'll use most of, you get 12, so that's a fair amount there. And for your 6-pin plus 2 PCIe connectors, so they're all can be joined to 8 pins PCIe, you get 6 all up, which is a fair amount on that. That's pretty much it for the box. I won't spend too much time on that. Not everyone likes to see the box. I've already got the power supply out. This power supply has been in a system before, so there are a few little marks on it when I was fitting it in that system. It does come sort of covered in this little fabric sort of cover thing. We get like standard some little rails there. We get some an important thing with these screws, because the power supply is rounded. It actually needs longer screws to screw in the back of your case. I'm not too sure about this idea. It's got me 50-50s, because if you lose these screws, you're going to need to buy longer screws the same length, because when this goes into your case, if it goes in flat, you actually need to get the long screws to go in. So you can't lose those. And then we just got some zip ties as well. In here we just got some warranty information, some more specs about the power supply and installing it. Plenty of foam. The power supply would come in there, that's where it goes, and then we've got the cables. So we'll quick have a look at some of the cables you get. We'll measure the length of these, which is probably the most important part, because that's really one thing you need to look at when buying a power supply. Alright, so we'll start off with the 24-pin motherboard connector. The first thing I noticed is it's sort of a bit of a mess. Like, I've never seen a cable that has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 or 8. They seem to be grouped in 4. I'm not sure why that's done. It's also confusing that you've got both ends are split, so you're kind of like, which is which. I guess not everyone is going to be an advanced installer when installing these. It is pretty simple to work out on the back of the power supply that these two, well, it does say PSU and PSU, but it's not really clearly labeled, and that's for your motherboard 24 pin. But apart from that, it's fine. I guess they've kind of done this to, they've made it flat like this so you can sort of round it up or roll it up, and you could twist it and put it through a case, whereas if you had one big flat cable, it would be quite large. But most other power supplies, when they have flat cables, they normally just stick the 24 pin as a rounded one with mesh over it. But apart from that, it's a pretty good length. It measured just past 60, so probably about 64 centimeters on that one there. Also, just to note, you do get a standard a power cable as well, an IEC cable. Moving over to the, what's this one, the SATA. So this is absolutely long as. So we'll start off, well, the length of the cable is over a meter. So it's about 110 centimeters, 105 centimeters. And this has your 1, 2, 3, 4 SATAs on it. And the SATAs start at, from the power supply connector, the SATA starts at 60 centimeters. So you've got 60 centimeters before the first SATA run actually starts. So that's actually really good. In most cases, you have an issue if your hard drives are at the top of the case, you can't get the length to the first one. The Molex cable is a fraction shorter at 1 meter. So it's a little bit smaller, but then once again, we've got 60 centimeters or fraction under 60 centimeters to where the first Molex starts. So that's really good as well. And that's got your 4 Molex on as well. Moving over to your EPS 8-pin, well, 2 4s, fully 8-pin. A pretty standard cable. It's just split into the two. I actually do quite like flat cables now on power supplies. I've used a few from different brands. They seem to be better than the rounded ones, because you can simply just route that behind a case like that, and it takes up no room at all. This EPS cable is 65 centimeters. So we'll actually test all this when we go on the case and check the length. But so far everything's looking pretty good for lengthwise. And then last is the PCIe cable. So we've got the power supply in there, it just says it there, and then we've got the two that branch off. And just to note, all these cables, you might be wondering why it's only got 8 there, the 8 there, and branches off into 2 8s or 2 6s. You might think that's not enough. These single cables here for each one are really thick and chunky. You only really need, say, like a massive end for the power supply end if you're running a video card off 2 ends, as if you're using thinner copper wire. But the copper in this is really thick, and they're actually really chunky cables. So you don't need to have a power supply end that has 8 or 10, sorry, more than 8 connectors, pins on the end of it. And then that cable is 60 centimeters to the first power PCIe connector, and then just past 70 centimeters for the other connector. So that's nice and long there. We'll just have a quick look at the power supply itself. One thing I didn't mention in that last bit was the bit that controls the software that connects to the power supply. It just uses a standard USB cable one end, and that plugs into your power supply, and then you've got your standard internal header USB. And then once you've done that, you just install the software and it's ready to go. Looking over at the power supply a bit more, we'll just check the length of it. It's actually not very long for sort of a high-end power supply. We're looking at 180 centimeters to be exact, so that's actually quite short. It's not humongous and oversized. Looking at the back where you plug your cable in, we've just got a standard switch. No light, that's not really needed, and just the Thermaltake logo, which is nice there. Each side has nothing on, so it doesn't actually have the specs on each side. It's got the specs on the top or the bottom, depending on which case you fit it in. And then this is where all your connectors go on this side. So it's pretty simple to work out. We've got your 2 main connectors, that's your 24 pin, the 2 go in there. We have your 4 peripherals there, 1, 2, 3, 4, that's your Molex and SATA. Your 3 video cards, PCI Express, because each of those had 2, so that equals 6. And then we got your CPU, which is your EPS, the 2 4s that equal the 8 pin. So I'm pretty much going to go on to the case now. Once I've done the case, I'll put it all in. I won't record me putting it all in because it'll go forever. And I'll probably do a next video of once it's all up and running, and we'll look at the software that controls this. Alright, I don't want to spend too much time on the box, but it does have a heap of features that I don't really want to miss later on, but I will cover these as I'm going over the case. The main thing is it's full tower. Dimensions are 583 by 230 by 560, so it's not relatively huge. It's 13.2 kilos, so it's not overly heavy as well. These two systems, or these 2 points here, the top one is what it comes with. So it comes with two 200mm fans in the front. Comes with a 200mm fan at the top. These are LED fans as well, and it comes with a 140mm at the back as well. But you can also put another 200mm at the top. So you can have 4 200mm all up in this case and a 140 in the back. But the actual fan support for the front, it can take 120, 2 120s, 3 120s, 140, 2 140s, or 200 or a 2 200s. The top looks like it's exactly the same, yep. And the rear can either take a 120 or 140, pretty standard. And the bottom, which is also pretty cool, can take a 120 or 2 120s as well. Another main aspect of this case is the radiator support. It can support a huge amount of radiators. It's sort of a mainstream case. It's not really a case that you need to go out specifically to buy for water cooling like some cases are designed for. This can take a heap of radiators. So the front can take a 120, a 240, a 360, or a 140, a 280, or 420. So the tops are your 120mm versions, the bottoms are your 140mm versions. And then the top can take a 120, 240, 360 as well. And the top can also take 140, 280, 420. So a huge amount of support there. I will show you later on, you do have to take some of the hard drive bays out if you do want to support all the radiators it can take. The rear can take a 120, and it's interesting, the bottom can take a 120 and a 240. So it's got holes, screws, cutouts for all of those ready to go. Another important feature is the CPU cooler height is 185. We'll test that once the motherboard's in, but 185 is plenty. And the VGA card length with the hard drive rack is 310, and without is 400. 400 is absolutely humongous. Even 310 is fine for any video card currently on the market. So that's it on the box. We'll start going over the case. So first off, the case comes with the protective film on the window. That's always good to see so it doesn't get marked. I've actually started to half take it off because sometimes it takes a while to actually take this off. So straight away, the window, nice large window, covers the whole system. It's really nice that you do get to see the hard drive bays because they do look well designed and they do look nice as well. Another thing to note with Thermaltake, most of the Thermaltake cases, is the screws actually don't come out all the way. They just sort of stop where the thread stops, so you can't lose your screws, which is a nice feature they have. All right, you also get a little bag of accessories. These are just screws, and it looks like it also has a motherboard to convert a 8-pin into a 4-pin, as some motherboards are doing that at the moment. All right, moving on. We might actually start covering the front and work our way around. So I'm not sure how well this picks up on the camera, but it's a really nice sort of matte black design. It's not glossy. I'm actually glad that it's not glossy because glossy cases aren't sort of looking the best these days. It is interesting that the dry bag covers are sort of indented. I think it actually does make a nice little feature of that, as opposed as if they were flat. You can just see they're probably indented about 1 or 2 mils. I might actually take this off. You do get the logo down the bottom, which is nice. To take this off, you just simply, like most cases, just grab underneath it. If I can grab the bit, and then it just pulls out like that. So there's your 2 fans there. So humongous fans. So intake on this. It's probably pretty good if you're installing the radiators. I'll have a look to see if you can install the radiators using these fans still here. I'm not sure if you'll be able to. You might need to use dedicated radiator fans to screw them in, but it'd be kind of interesting if you could leave these on here. Probably cooling support for the radiator isn't going to be as good that way, but it's just sort of a handy feature to have. And then we just have 2 CD-ROM bays up the top, and then the fans down below. Moving on to, we'll have a look at the back. So on the back for the PCI slots, we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So it won't take a full board where you need 11 or 12 slots, but it'll still take a few. You're pretty much your ATX board and your micro, your mini, all those standards. Down the bottom where your power supply goes, this is where you've got 140mm fan or the 120mm fan. And then you'll notice we've got these little fan filters on the top and on the bottom. So it's nice that they've included. They've actually included fan filters all around. You've got one at the bottom, one at the top, and I actually missed the one in the top or the front section, and that just clips out like this, and that's the same design. And actually, you'll notice that the mesh isn't plastic. It's actually, it feels like a really good quality aluminium or steel, and this is actually quite heavy and quite weighty, which actually feels nice. And we might actually take these out So that's the top one. That's the bottom one. So that's pretty much it on the back. We'll just take this side cover off. Do note that this is actually sort of beveled out a bit, so that'll allow an extra centimetre or two for cables. Alright, so the first thing I noticed once taking the side off is the amount of room you've got to work with behind your motherboard tray. It might be hard to pick it up in the video, but if I have a look at this, so yeah, so you've got about nearly 2.5 centimetres without even the indents in the side panel. So you'd have about 3 centimetres, which is quite a fair amount behind the motherboard tray. There's not too many cases that I'll actually take the camera and just have a look so you guys can see that. So you can actually see the amount of space you've got there, which is actually really, really good. And you can also see the size of the cutout hole there for cooling or water cooling or air cooling brackets to go on here, and that's actually quite large as well. We'll just have a look at the internal cables they give you and see what you actually get. If I can actually pull this out. And then I'll cover the top because you've got some pretty cool buttons on the top as well. Alright, so you have your SATA. Nope, no SATA. Actually, that's a good thing. I don't really like SATA, external SATA on cases anymore. I don't think anyone uses it, and it's not really needed. We have USB 3 internal header. That's actually got quite a bit of length on it. That'd easily reach towards the back if you needed to, but most times you just need to go in the either side or the bottom corner. We have one USB header for 2 USB ports, HD audio. It doesn't have your AC97 adapter, which no one uses anymore. And then we just have your reset hard drive and your power LED and power switch. It's actually interesting to see that those are sort of split into 2 cables as well. And these are actually quite long as well, so I don't need to measure those. You've got tons of room for them to fit through there. To get the top, I might actually sort of take the camera off the tripod and we can just cover the top and see what's up there. Right, so moving on to the top part of the case, we've got some pretty cool controls over on the left. We have your fan LED, which you can change for the 2 front and the 2 top. That's pretty cool. We have your fan speed on high or low, and then we have your reset button, and in between those is your hard drive activity LED. These all seem to have LEDs inside the buttons, which should look pretty cool once they're on. Once the system's on, we'll go over this and see what they look like. And also the power button is over in the middle, which I think is a good spot to put it, and it looks like it has a ring around it that lights up once the system is on. And these are just single clicks, and no sort of push in and push out or anything. Moving on to the right, we have the 2 USB 2, 2 USB 3.0s, and your microphone and your headphone port. So it's pretty nice there. You've got an even design either side, nice and symmetrical. It's got the same mesh design as the front. Now once you put the front back on, it really sort of continues the design all the way around. I might actually just put the front on now so we can actually see how it looks as a whole. And then the back of the case also rounds off the same as how the front at the top does and the bottom does as well. So that's it there. It just sort of follows the design all the way around. So it's sort of a new design from Thermaltake. I haven't seen a case that looks like this from them. So if I take the front off again, if you actually have a look, you can actually see how much room there is for radiator support at the top. So that's how much thickness you've got just for air cooling, and that's not even including where the motherboard tray comes to at the top of the case. So if we have a quick look, if I just lower the camera down, so if you look inside there, that gap right there is just how much room. So you can see that fan, that is a standard 2.5 centimeter fan, I believe how thick they are, and you've still got space above that fan. So you could nearly stack 2 fans on top of each other, and from there to there you've got about 70 millimeters. So there's definitely heaps of modding potential within the top here to fit extra radiators or extra cooling if you need it. Just a few more things to note around the back. I did notice something with the hard drive bays you can do. This case has been designed incredibly well with the potential in that with the user expandability that one day you might have a heap of hard drives, one day you might have no hard drives, or vice versa. It also has the capability of having only a few drives up the top, a few drives in the bottom. At first, when I first saw it, I thought you had to have all the drives in or none, but it's actually a pretty cool way how they've done it, how you can have only a few dry bays, have a radiator down the bottom, and still keep some drives. So I'll show you that in a tick, but even further to that, you can still put 2 hard drives on the back as well, using the existing hard drive caddies. But before I do that, I'll just show you how these 2 fans are connected. So the 2 fans from the front connect up the top, just via your standard 3-pin. And also the top gets power by a single Molex connector. So that's where it will get power for these fans, so you don't have to actually plug these in to your power supply. So it's pretty cool that they're controlled by the top. I'll just grab a hard drive and we'll just see how well these... so it's good that these caddies come pre-filled with the connectors. They're just ready to go. You can put screws in if you want. It's always a good option to have the screw holes there if you want. So these you just simply line them up, and then you actually take one out, or you have to take both out. So it looks like you have to take both out. So you just take out these 2 little clips from each side, and then you just line up your hard drive like so it slits in, and then once it's in, you just push them back, and that's one. And now with the second one, make sure the holes line up like so, and then it's clipped in, and that's in. Super solid. That's actually better than most I've seen. It does not actually move at all. So that's a really good design, and then that'll just slide into the front. But on the back, you can do this little nifty idea that takes 2. It might be hard to see because I actually wondered what... You've got a little hook there, and you've got one up the top as well, and you can actually just... It doesn't sort of hang off the hook. It actually clips in really well. I wasn't quite sure on how well it would go. I'll give it a go with the hard drive in, because it was actually a bit hard the first time I actually tried doing it. It's not as easy as it sort of looks. That's it there. So it just clips in like that, so you can take 2 drives there. These can also take 2 SSDs as well. You've got the mounts, so each one can take an SSD. Yeah, they have the mounts there for it. So you could have no drives in the front, and you still got 2 full drive spots on the rear, which I think is just an exceptional idea for a case like this. Alright, so another area where this case shines is the expandability and the way you can move around these hard drives. So you've seen how the back can be done. This is how the front can be done. First off, I thought this was just a single rail all the way up, but it's actually divided into 3 separate cages. You've got 2, and then 3, and then 3. So that gives you 6, 7, 8 drives all up. I've already undone a heap of screws on the side. They come with screws in here. Each caddy gets screwed in. These get screwed in by 3 on the front, 3 on the back, 3 on the front, and then the top ones are 2 and 2. So what you've got is this support rail along the top. So I'll just undo. I want to try and get as much as this on the video without sort of cutting any seams, because it is sort of a very unique design. There's no sort of other cases that implement something that I reckon as well as this. So say you want to put a radiator down the bottom. Of course, at the moment it can't be done because you've got too many hard drives down the bottom, but say you still need to get a few hard drives in there, and you need a few more than the back can take. So say you need about 5 or 6 hard drives. So once I've done that, I've taken that rail off. I can now, it's got tons of support, so there's no way that this is flimsy in any way. It'd actually be good for sort of a file server, or if you're taking it to LAN parties, something like that. And I'm not sure how this will come out. Oh, so it just slides, okay, so it slides onto the bottom of the one above it, just like that. So now I've got support for a nice long radiator to go on the bottom. I've got plenty of room there. But you might be wondering, well, these are just hanging out sort of in no man's land. But what you can do is this bracket can now be reversed. Just let me bear with me here. So this top bracket, I might have to take the other drives out. Just let me start taking those drives out just to do it, to make sure. And then you can even take them all out. If you want a radiator on the front, you're doing a full water cooling system, you can just have two. You could just have the two drives in the back or two SSDs. If you want to make this a high-end gaming system, you probably don't need a heap of mechanical hard drives. It's really just up to you. And now this top one just sort of supports itself. Right, so that's it completely empty now. So you've got a massive space to work with now. So let me just put this rail back. Okay, so that's like that. I won't put all the screws in. Alright, so that's those like that. So now you can just slide these back, or this one actually screws back in. And I really like it with these, how they're not ones that just are spring-loaded caddies that require you to just bend something back, because those can get knocked in travelling. The caddies can open up and other things like that, whereas these ones actually use a slide mechanism. You actually see there's no way on that coming out. You actually have to slide it that way and then it comes out. So you just can't pull it out, which I really like. I think that's a nice idea. So now you've got the rail on this side. You can start sliding in the drives like so, if I can line that up. And you can attach them from the front with the screws along this side, so that gives them the full support, and you also still have the support along the back. So now that'll fit a 240, 280 mil radiator on the bottom. Let me grab the power supply. So now once you have your power supply, I'll just put this one in like this. Just rest it in. That's how much room you've got down the bottom, so all the way up to the top. So plus cables, you want a bit of room, so that's 300 mil, including all. It's actually about 340, and then add a bit for cable. So you've got 300 mils of room there to play with. So that's plenty of room there. That's pretty much it for covering sort of the internals. I don't want to spend too much time on it. I have sort of spent a fair bit just talking about what this case can do, because it actually has quite a few unique features that I haven't seen on cases before, especially with this. The hard drive area, you can actually also take the top CD-ROM cover out or bay chassis. A lot of cases have them hard fixed, so these are just done by screws, so you can fit a full radiator up there. So it's actually really well for water cooling. I'm going to put a system in now. I won't film that. I'll put it all in. We've got some good gear from Asus, a water cooling system to go in, and then we'll just fire it up and see how it all looks, and I'll just tell you if there are any issues on getting it all in. Okay, so the system is now built. Everything's in there. I just got some 780 GPUs in there just to show you how much room there is to work with. I left all these bays in. I don't actually have any mechanical drives. I did mount the SSDs in sort of a showcasing way, because this is a display system. So instead of just putting them in one of the caddies, I decided to just put in a bracket and just sort of stick them so they're facing out. We've also got an Extreme Water 2.0 up the top. That's a relatively thick one. First of all, before I sort of go into some of the details on what I liked and what I didn't like, we'll just have a look at the noise, see what the stock cooling is like. I've actually disconnected these fans on the Water 2.0 purely because these are quite loud, and you don't actually get these with the system. So we'll just turn it on. So that's it now. I'll actually move this little mic closer. You might not be able to hear anything. Literally, I'm about half a meter away and I can't hear this system at all. The power supply is dead quiet, considering it's got these two cards. These two cards aren't doing much at the moment, but the system is still really, really quiet. The advantage of having such large fans is they can spin much slower to produce the same amount of air as smaller fans. So I'll just move this around a bit more. So yeah, so really happy with how quiet this system is, and that's on high fan speed. Put it on low, it's even more quieter, and I can't even hear it on high. So that's one great thing. What I'll do now is I'll connect these fans back up. I'll put the side panel back on, and we'll sort of go around it at some of the main features that I was really impressed with. Okay, so I'll start with the back side of the case. As I said earlier, how much room there was behind the motherboard tray, and with this little bit that's sort of dented out a bit. I haven't bothered zip tying any cables. I haven't done any cable management, and this back just went straight on, no issues at all. It is like a closing door design. It's not a sliding door design. I really like these ones that you can sort of just close. They sort of work much better. So you can sort of see how many cables I got there. There are a ton of cables, and this back just went on, no worries at all. One sort of minor sort of feature I wish there were more of. There's not too many zip tie areas. I see one up here, one down here, another one here, and another one here. So I think there's about 4 all up. There might be 4, 5. So I guess maybe a few more of those sort of around this area, because that would have helped putting this down. But having so much room, it's not a huge concern. But it's just something nice to add to that. We'll move around to the front and the top and some of the features there. Alright, so starting with the front, one of the things I missed earlier was the 2 drive bay covers. They simply just pop out from the inside, but these are the same design as the mesh. They are hard steel front bay covers. They're designed really well. I was surprised that they actually were, and once they're in, they're probably the most solid dry bay covers I've sort of ever seen before, and they're sort of nice and strong, which is really nice to see. Moving back over to the front, once it's on, it's probably one of the best fronts I've seen on the case. It's just nice and clean, smooth edges all the way down, and once it's on with these blue LEDs, it just really finishes it off. And then same with the top as well. When it's complete black or darkness with the lights off, it looks really good. And then you've got the extra sort of function here of just turning them off if you don't want them on, just like that. So that's really handy that they've done that as well. And then you can see the power button, which I mentioned before. It's actually got the little blue LED around there as well, which is really good. Another thing to mention was the front panel audio cable. One good feature they did, they actually made that a bit longer than the USB, because often your front panel cable does go around up here in the motherboard. So it was good that they actually added that a bit longer as well, which is good. Moving up to the top radiator area, mounting the Extreme Water 2.0 was an absolute breeze. What they've done is they've actually, instead of just giving you the right holes for 120mm, 180 and so on for 240, 280, they've just given you little grooves along the whole way. So I could actually move this around, slide this forward, slide this back, and it's the same on the front as well. They haven't given you individual screw holes, which I absolutely hate, because you're really restricted on what you can do. This gives you the freedom to slide it wherever you want. And you'll also notice that they actually have indented the grooves, so it does allow you to put the fan back on top that comes with it, the 200mm, and you can put your radiators underneath, so you can have both, which is a really good feature as well. Alright, moving on. The PSU rail I noticed down the bottom here, you can actually slide this all the way along. It's got screws. I noticed in some cases these are actually pop riveted, so you don't have to worry about that. You can slide them as long as you want. And another feature is that the dry bays, or the internal dry bays, don't actually go all the way to the bottom, so you can still comfortably fit the 2 120mm fans like they mentioned in here as well for extra cooling, which is also really good. Another thing I like, which Thermaltake have now moved away from, is the screws for your PCI cards are now inside. I worked with a few Thermaltake cases where the screws are kind of weird on the outside. You have to unscrew them first, then go inside, but I really like it how they are inside, which is good. But that's pretty much most of it there. We might just have a look at the bottom feet. That's another feature I really liked, and then we'll just finish off the review. Alright, so what I noticed with the feet is they're really solid. They're joined really well to the rest of the case. Gives you a nice solid platform to work with when you're building, when you're transporting your PC and things like that. Also, I don't really like the round ones that just clip onto the bottom because you always lose those on carpet. Another thing I liked is the foam sort of feet or foam padding that are on the feet. They're not the rubber style ones that leave black streaks on your desk when you move your case around. So that's a really good bonus there. Also, I've noticed another feature is you get a fan filter for the bottom front, because I mentioned the back bottom as well, but you get one on the front bottom as well that slides out the front. So you get a total of 4 fan filters all up, one at the top, one at the front, and 2 at the bottom, which is really good to see because not all cases will give you fan filters all around. Alright, so that's pretty much it for this review. We'll just go over some of the main things again. You probably noticed that the power supply connectors, I've got some sort of proper sleeve ones in, but then I've also left the stock ones that come with the power supply, just to give you an idea on sort of how much room they take up with the stock ones. But you can really see there's really not too much difference because they still use the same cable and you can just bend them around, so they really don't take up much room at all. So that's something good to see. One thing I did notice with the 8-pin that runs to the motherboard at the top back, it was a really tight reach. One reason is because I got the power supply reversed, so you can see the top gold bit, so that makes the EPS 8-pin all the way to this edge, whereas if you had it the other way you would get a bit more length. But maybe if they made it just a little bit longer, that would probably help. But apart from that, I think Thermaltake have really, as I said before, outdone themselves with this case. It retails in Australia for under $200. Pretty sure you're not going to get a case from any other brand that has this many features, this much radiator support, hard drive support, and you can fit 4 video cards comfortably in this case. As for the power supply, it retails for just under $300. It's a bit on the expensive side, but if you check out the review I mentioned earlier from Johnny Guru and you're after a really high quality power supply, this is the one to go for. So I want to say thanks to Thermaltake for sending both the case and the power supply, and the next video will be more in depth on the software that runs this power supply, and you can check out how much it's going to cost you over a year and things like that to run. So thanks for watching and stay tuned for next time.